Hey, folks, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we have lots of conversations all about the Fab Four here. Any aspect of their careers we cover, the group years, the solo years, what's going on in the news, you name it. And we have complete freedom here on this channel to talk about whatever we want to, because it's my channel. Anyway, my special guest this time is Don Dannemann, who back in the 60s was part of a band called the Cyrkle, and they're still together to this day. They toured with the Beatles in the United States back in 1966, and they have their first CD out in 56 years. Okay? Center of the world. And so Don is going to talk about the whole history of the Cyrkle, his times with the Beatles, and the new album. Welcome, Don.
Hey, how you doing, Ken? Good to be here.
It's great to finally do this because I saw you at the Fest for Beatle fans last year and been waiting all this time to talk to you finally.
Well, good to be here and love to talk about it.
Okay, why don't we just start by, I know most fans who have heard of the Cyrkle know the hits, Red Rubber Ball, Turn Down Day. They may not know the whole history of how the band got together. Can you kind of briefly, if you can, talk about that and what eventually led to your touring with the Beatles and getting signed by the Beatles manager, Brian Epstein?
Well, I was from a young age, I was musical and loved rock and roll when I first heard it. And as I was about to enter college, I thought, I guess I'm supposed to be liking jazz because you're a college man would have to be a jazz man, jazz, rock and roll would be for young kids.
Uh-huh.
When I got to Lafayette College in the fall of 1961, it was a big fraternity school, and freshmen, first semester freshmen couldn't have anything to do with fraternities. You were isolated. But the fraternity parties that they had on campus, I still remember walking around campus and hearing rock bands in all of the fraternity houses at all of these parties. And I remember being thrilled at like, oh, I guess I can still like rock and roll. That is awesome.
Mhm.
So here I am now at Lafayette, and at a freshman mixer, once again, fall of 1961, there was a band, and during the break, one of the breaks from the band, a couple of guys, fellow freshmen, picked up instruments and started playing. And I'm standing there with a good friend of mine, a new friend, we're freshmen. He says, Don, you play guitar, you should go play with them. And he helped me lug my amp down. And I asked, hey, can I play with you guys? They said, oh yeah, sure, let's do it. And by the way, one of our songs, one of the songs from this album kind of talks about that. Anyway, so we really clicked. It was one of those wonderful, we knew all the same songs, Buddy Holly,
Mhm.
Everly Brothers, that kind of stuff. And we started playing, and it really worked well. And so they said, hey, God, we should have a band. Let's start a band. Well, I loved the idea of doing it, but I didn't want to be in a band because I had a girlfriend, my high school honey back home in Eastchester, New York, who
Mhm.
was still in high school. And but I still, just for the fun of it, we practiced. At Christmas vacation that year, my wonderful high school honey informed me she had a new boyfriend. And that was heartbreaking for me. But when I went back after Christmas break, I told the guys, well, you know what? I guess I don't have a girlfriend, so we can play. If you want to get jobs, get them, I'm in. And funnily enough, we were at Lafayette College. Our first job was at Lehigh down the road. Somebody knew somebody, and we played at a fraternity at Lehigh.
Mhm.
And we, over the course of our college career, we became the band to get. We learned Beatles stuff, we learned Beach Boy stuff, Four Seasons. We loved harmony. And of course, all the typical oldies, like I say, Buddy Holly, Everly Brothers, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
In the spring of 1964, this would have been, when the Beatles were just killing the music world, we bought long hair wigs and did a Beatles show, which we were very precise about. We learned that Beatles stuff really well. We did a Beatles show at spring interfraternity weekend, so the whole school got to see it, and everybody went wild. It was probably, I would say, this was as much a rush as an entertainer as it was even being on the Beatles tour. I mean, everybody went bananas. It was one of those major entertainment successes. And because we were heard by the band leader of the other band, which was a big orchestral kind of band, it was Warren Covington leading the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, he asked us to come and play with him in Atlantic City, which we did. And you know, it never worked out to join forces with him, but there we were in Atlantic City, which got us to say, hey, let's see if we can get a summer job here. That got us to the Alibi Bar, which in the end of summer of 1965, Nat Weiss, a divorce lawyer actually from New York, who was friends and became partners with Beatle manager Brian Epstein, he heard us and he said, hey, I'm going to form a management company with Brian here in the States, and you guys are really good. Let's stay in touch. Okay, end of summer, bye-bye, going our separate ways. Three of us actually did continue playing at Lafayette at fraternity parties, but it was kind of winding down. I thought, you know, Nat Weiss says he actually knows Brian Epstein. Maybe I'll give this guy a call and we'll take a shot. Now, I'm living with my folks in East Chester, New York, which is a suburb of the city. Right. Anyway, I call Nat and he says, you know, he recognizes immediately. Oh, Don, yeah, great to hear from you. Come on down and I will introduce you to Brian. So I kind of gulp. You got to be kidding me. You're really going to do this? You know, because we thought baloney, you know, like ain't going to happen. This right. Is ridiculous. Can't be. Okay, so he gives me an address and a time, and it was on the Upper East Side in one of those walk-up buildings on the side streets on, you know, one of the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Take a buddy of mine. We go down. We're at this party. And there is a party there, but Nat is not there. And we're standing around. We're both kind of bashful. Anyway, finally, Nat walks in and I walk up to him. Oh, yeah, Don, good to see you. Come on down. You know, follow me down. I follow him back down the stairs and walk outside. And there's a limo parked right on the curb. And he opens the door, and I love that I'm on video because it was a gracious moment. He beckoned me into the car, opened the door with a wonderful, magnanimous gesture, and he seats me in, and now I'm sitting opposite Brian Epstein. And I'm trying to be very cool, but inside it's like, oh my God. Now he introduces me, and I have to take one step back and clarify what I think of as my level of talent, musical talent, because the next thing I'm going to tell you requires that. I think I have a pretty decent light rock voice. Is it the best? Probably not, but, you know, it got us a few hits. I'm a pretty good guitar player. Am I Eric Clapton? No. Okay, having said that, now I'm now sitting facing Brian Epstein with Nat Weiss also sitting next to Brian on the other side, and I'm looking right at him. Nat now introduces me, and this to me is like a little, you know, you have how memory works. This is a little video in my head because this one stayed exact. Mm-hmm. Nat introduces Brian Epstein. I would like you to meet Don Dannemann, one of the finest musicians I know. which is why I needed to clarify that,
Yeah.
No, I'm not, And all right, now I get to shake Brian's hands. Now, Brian was a full-fledged gentleman. In all of the meetings we had with him, oh, Don, yes, it's very lovely to meet you. I'm trying to imitate him,
Mm.
I hope the gentlemanly comes across when I imitate him. Yes, it's very lovely to meet you. Nat has spoken very highly of you. And yes, perhaps it would be nice if we can see you guys play and get things perhaps going. So a few things back and forth. There was a wonderful short exchange. And then Nat beckoned me in the same way. Okay, Don. Opens the door, out I go. And there I am standing on the street. And my sense of that moment is I just picture it's sort of the end of the video. And the way the video ends, it's actually the camera is behind me looking up the street, and there's no traffic. It's at night and it's a side street. And you see me silhouetted and looking up the street, and the limo slowly pulls off into darkness. So that was the beginning of the Brian Epstein connection, the whole Beatles connection. And essentially that got us, there's a whole bunch of other little details I can give you, but the bottom line is that got the ball rolling. And so we did a few demos. We presented them to Nat. He got excited. We got it. He brought us into New York. We got our Columbia record contract. We got to hear Red Rubber Ball. And Red Rubber Ball, we just heard, bandmate Tommy Dawes was hanging out with a guy named Barry Kornfeld in the Village, who had a relationship with Paul Simon. And we heard Red Rubber Ball on a scratchy 45 demo record, just Paul singing Red Rubber Ball. At the time when we were looking to, what are we going to record? We got our Columbia record contract. We're being managed by Brian. So we started that ball rolling. And now we were still the Rondells from Lafayette College. And everybody recognized we needed a new name. So Brian was in the studio one day. He was in town from England, and he comes up to me and, oh, Don, take a look at this. And he hands me a business card. Well, at least it looks like a business card. I see it says Brian Epstein. No, Don, turn it over. Okay, I turn it over and I see, not sure what I'm actually seeing, but I can't, I don't know what I'm looking at. Oh, Don, that's your new name. And it's the Cyrkle. And please note the funny spelling, Cyrkle. And when I was back in Britain, I asked the boys, I'm saying that in quotes because they always refer to the Beatles as the boys. These are the boys. I asked the boys, said, we have a new American group and we're looking for a name. Anybody have any ideas? And it was John that came up with the name, the Cyrkle, with the funny spelling. You know how John always thinks. So that's how we got our name. And it is so amazing to me realizing now, how many years later, that we got our name from John Lennon. I mean, John Lennon gave us our name. It is such an amazing thrill. The sad part of the story is that I, being a awful keeper of stuff, like that card was in the trash the next day. That's the sad part of the story. But it is very cool that John gave us our name.
Yeah. Can I backtrack a little bit here?
Yeah, please.
First of all, they say timing is everything in this business. The fact that you called Nat Weiss at a time when Brian happened to be in New York, that's pretty remarkable to itself. But when Nat heard you guys for the first time and he was thinking about signing you, wasn't he looking for original songs? Did you play any original material at all at that point?
No, we were just a very good cover band. We did well. It's like I said, when we did that show that got us to Atlantic City in the first place,
Mm.
we did Beatles songs and Beach Boys songs and Four Seasons songs, as well as all the other oldies. Well, they weren't so old at the time
Mm.
of the day, and we paid real attention to the arrangements and the parts. So if we did, well, you know what? Let me turn my phone off. Hold on 1 second. I should put do not disturb on here. We I still remember Tommy Dawes, bandmate Tommy Dawes. He came to me one day. He says, "Hey Don, I was up all night and I was listening with stereo headphones. I think I have all the right Beach Boy parts for Good Vibrations, or one of the really the good Beach Boy songs. We did them really well. We did the Beatles stuff and the Beach Boy stuff. It was a thrill to do it because we love doing that. And that's what Nat heard. He heard really good cover arrangements, and that got him really excited.
Mm. So Nat never said anything to you like, do you guys write your own material? He just was impressed with your performance.
He was impressed with the performance, and of course there was discussion of writing, and we wrote, Tommy and I wrote songs. There are songs of ours on the first album, on both albums, Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day. And so there was a combination of, okay, here's songs that we wrote, let's see what we can come up with. And I still remember at a rehearsal session with our new producer from Columbia, John Simon, who actually, thinking back, he was pretty close to a George Martin to us, what George Martin was to the Beatles.
Mm.
Yeah, he really made a difference in what we did. And I remember, what do you think about this? And oh, well, let's give it a shot. It's a cute song, let's give it a shot. And that's kind of how the ball was rolling. It was a kind of a joint effort how that all happened.
Okay. Now, Red Rubber Ball was a song that Paul Simon wrote with Bruce Woodley.
Yes.
And so you look at the first album that you recorded, you've got that song. You also have another song that Paul Simon wrote with Woodley, Cloudy, which Simon
Yeah.
and Garfunkel recorded themselves. And then there was another song, I Wish You Could Be Here, that the two of them wrote together. Was there some kind of an agreement that you made with Paul Simon? Did you get to meet Paul Simon and discuss this or anything?
Well, we certainly met Paul and Garfunkel. Yeah, we met them, but there was no specific discussion, as in, we would like you to be a writer for our group. It was nothing like that. It was just like he had a bunch of great songs, and we having now know him and having the connection, we took advantage of that. Now, which of course brings me to the well, you want to call it the big mistake of our time. And that was, we actually did it was at Columbia Studios. One day we were coming into the studio and Simon and Garfunkel were just finishing up, and Paul came up to me and he said, hey, there's a song that we're recording on this album, and I think it might be really perfect for you guys. And if you want to do it, the album's not coming out for a while. Do it, put it out as fast as you can, and it'll be your song.
Mm.
And so we listened to it. Engineer hit the song. Everybody bops around in the studio, and we all agree it sounds great. And for some brain freeze reason that I still cannot 100% put my finger on why not, but we didn't do it. We thought, well, yeah, maybe we'll do it down the road, but not right now. And that was Feelin' Groovy.
Right.
We had an opportunity to do, and we didn't. And that is on this album, by the way. We did our own version of it. And it's kind of like, well, if we had done it then, it would have sounded something like this. And it's on there, and it's a nice version. It's good to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Well, this was at a point where Paul Simon was established, right?
Oh, very, very much established. Yeah.
It must have
Yeah.
been
They were very big stars at this point.
it must have been really tough to say no to Paul Simon at that point.
Well, I don't think we didn't specifically say no at the moment. We just said, "Wow, that's a great song. Let's think about that," and then we just kind of went on with what we were doing,
But
and then it just sort of faded away. We didn't, we just kind of forgot about it.
yeah, the band Harper's Bazaar had a hit with it.
Yes,
I
and it
guess
was about. I think it was somewhere maybe 6 months later that happened. And I still remember sort of the sinking feeling we had when we heard it. It's like, oh, we forgot about that. Oh, how did we do that?
so. When you recorded Red Rubber Ball, did you have any kind of gut feeling this was going to be a big hit?
No, at least not me personally. So here I'm going to share with you various perceptions of Red Rubber Ball over time. Okay, so when we recorded Red Rubber Ball, my feeling was cute song. And as it got to be a hit, my feeling remained cute song. I'm very thankful we have a hit record with it. Now, and that's how I felt
Mhm.
for many years. Fast forward to the mid 80s now. Long gone, out of the business. I was very lucky to have a commercial music career. Had a production company. We did jingles and audio work for ad agencies. So mid 80s, a small record company, Sundays is the name of it, got the license to our portfolio, and they wanted a comment when they put out, their new stuff. So anyway, they sent me a haha cassette of here's what we're putting out. This was still cassette, and we weren't even up to CDs yet.
Mhm.
And they wanted comments. And I hadn't really thought much about Red Rubber Ball in a really long time. I was very thankful and happy to be into my commercial career. So I was by myself on a plane, going somewhere, not sure where. And I thought, they wanted comments. Let me listen to this. Took out my Sony Walkman, haha again, put on headphones, put my head down, hit play, and the first thing that comes on is Red Rubber Ball. And from the first second that I heard that, not having listened to it, like I say, in a really long time, I had an epiphany. When you hear Red Rubber Ball, if you're familiar with it as having been a hit,
Mhm.
that time, it's one of those things they say about hit records. If one of the qualities about a hit record is you know immediately what the song is from the first second you hear it when it comes on. The first second was like, oh my God, that the organ and lead guitar that go so nicely with each other. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, organ, guitar. Ba, 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 doo, ba, boo, da, ba, da, ba.
Yeah.
It was like, oh my God, that sounds like a hit record. Holy cow. And then I come in vocally, bandmate Tommy Dawes joins me, and I'm realizing, and there's no auto tune or anything like that. We were right on with each other, and we sounded like nobody else. It made me, I realized, there's nobody that sounds like that.
Mhm.
Now, you may like it or not, but we sounded like what we sounded like. Nobody sounded like that. So I was actually thrilled with the recording and the quality of the recording. And I thought to myself, wow, I really see how this deserves to be a hit,
Mhm.
just from the recording song aspect of it. Now, I want to fast forward to our Cyrkle revival, which is now taking place. It started, we actually started in 2016, and let me finish the Red Rubber Ball, and then however you want to go there, I'll share the revival story, how that took place. When we do meet and greet after shows, I have been blown away once again, and this is new for me because I never realized that I have been blown away by what people tell me about what Red Rubber Ball meant to them. And just a couple of simple examples. Well, the first one is pretty obvious, oh, can you sign this 45? I've had it since the beginning and it's been played to death, but would you sign? Yeah, of course, that's pretty cool that they played it, it's scratchy, they've kept it all this time for 55 years, whatever. And so that's one thing. Okay, another one, a guy, he comes up to me after a show and he shakes my hand and he says, thank you. And I look him back in the eye. Well, you're welcome. Why are you thanking me? He says, I want you to know that Red Rubber Ball got me through the worst nasty divorce. And I would wake up in the morning, that song would come on the air, and it just, it made me feel good. The morning sun is shining like a red rubber ball. I think it's going to be all right. Yeah, the worst is over now. So once again, it meant something to that guy. And probably the biggest one, and this is the first time it happened, I just cried, it teared up. But it has happened again and again. It happens over and over. A gentleman comes up to me, he's wearing a vet's hat, and he says, I want you to know that Red Rubber Ball was on a little battery-operated tape recorder that we had in Nam. And I can't tell you how many battles that song helped us get through. And we teared up and hugged. Sure. And that was so, and I tear up now when I say it, I choke up a little bit. That was so meaningful to me. And so basically what I got is that Red Rubber Ball meant so much to so many thousands of people, a few of whom I now get to meet when we do shows and we do meet and greet. But it is an absolute honor to have been a part of that song. So it's just amazing.
You have no idea how much certain songs can mean to people, especially lyrics, where it can apply, whether it's getting through a divorce or the worst of times. And it's got to be the greatest feeling to know that that song, it's not just a hit record, sold 1 million copies. There's more to it than that.
Yeah. It's so meaningful to so many people. And I'm going to repeat, it's an honor to have been part of the sound of that song. Yeah.
Now, I have to bring up the fact that you guys covered a Beatles song on your album Neon. I'm Happy Just to Dance with You. And it's a really unusual arrangement.
Yes, it is.
Why did you pick that song? It actually several times modulates, which for people that don't know that means changes key. You do that quite frequently in the song, which
a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and why did you use that approach? To start with, why did you pick that song?
Well, as already said, we were huge Beatles fans. And we could have picked any Beatles song and would have loved to do it. I think the reason, I'm thinking back now, the reason we picked that is I'm going to say something good about us and something not so good about us. But I think the good part about us at that time of the Cyrkle and who we were is that there was an intellectual component to our music and what we did. Now, that was the good part. I think the not so good part is that we maybe were too intellectual for too much. And it would have been, I still think back now from this vantage point, thinking back, besides the intellectual stuff, I think we would have been well served by doing also, not to take away from the other stuff, a 3-chord song. The equivalent of good loving, just simple 3 chords, have fun with it, and we never did. And that, I think that might have been something that would have been good for us. But getting back to Happy Just to Dance with You, this was the idea of we can do all these interesting, it allowed us to do all these interesting things with it. And it sort of, it allowed us to be intellectual. I mean, I think as simple as that. I mean, all those intricate key changes and then come back and go there and back. And that's basically where that came from.
It's almost like an early sign of progressive rock in a way.
Yeah, I suppose one maybe could say that. Yeah.
Huh.
But it was not like there was nothing hard rock about it. It was, it was light rock, but it was intellectual. Let's think about what we're doing here. We're not going to go to the obvious place. We're going to go somewhere else.
Okay. Now I've got a rather unusual question. This might throw you off.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's a couple of songs on your first album there that were written or co-written by a guy named Stephen Friedland. And the reason why I bring him up is because he eventually signed a contract with Apple Records and he became Brute Force.
Okay.
Known for the infamous song King of Fa.
Wait a minute, say that again.
King of Fa.
Oh, okay.
It's a single that came out. He only released it. It's the only single that was released, I should say, by Brute Force, by this guy on Apple Records. And I remember, because I haven't said this before on my channel, but I interviewed Stephen in August of 2021. And I haven't put the interview up only because I was getting some criticism about the lighting in my room. And I was very dark in this interview, so I felt bad about it. But I think because of the fact that we're doing this interview, it's giving me reason to post that interview. But, he had said to me something to the effect that it was his association with the Cyrkle or Tom Dawes' girlfriend or something that led to his signing with Apple.
Well, other than the specific relationship that he had with Tommy, because they had become friends, I don't know very much about his career. So there, I can't help you. But it would make sense that maybe he had a shot through that with Tommy. But the one song, and I'm pretty sure it was only one actually, that he had something to do with that was on the Red Rubber Ball album, was Fire in the Fireplace.
Uh-huh.
And I'm still remembering that because Tommy came in one day and said, "Hey, I was hanging out with Steve Friedland," and I think he was Brute Force back then. I'm recollecting Brute Force from the beginning, but I can't swear to that one way or the other. And they had written this song together, and we listened to it, and it was kind of interesting, with a very vibrato guitar, so we did record it. But that's about it that I can tell you about Brute Force. Now, I did actually, and I'm trying to remember what the context was, I did have some communication with him somewhere in more recent times. Now, I don't remember, was it a couple of years ago or 5 years ago or something, but in the 2000s, I did actually have some communication with him. And it was just, ha, how are you? It's kind of fun to talk. And I know he said he does something about he had some music show at a club that he did. in New York, and he invited me to come. Hey, if you want to come and do like that, and I chose not to. But that's about all I can tell you about Brute Force.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he usually plays small clubs. He's still very active. He's still writing material. A
Oh
lot
yeah,
of what he writes, I consider to be very much for the theater.
yeah.
Very theatrical what he writes.
Okay.
Um, on that first album, there is a song that he wrote with Tom. Why can't you give me what I want? In addition to There's a Fire in the Fireplace. So he was involved apparently with two songs on the first
Now,
album.
wait a minute. Is it? I'm now blanking out, but isn't that the same song?
No, Why Can't You Give Me What I Want is a different song.
Oh, okay. Then I don't remember that. Okay.
All right. I just
Yeah.
wanted to know because of the whole Beatle connection. It led to Apple. And so
Okay.
tell me a little bit about Turn Down Day. Is that a real sitar that's used in it?
Yes. Yes. And the way that came about, well, first off, we got Turn Down Day from very simply the usual, other than what we wrote ourselves. John Simon, we'd go into his office and he would have a stack of 45 demos, and we would listen, and he would put it on. We would listen to maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Almost every one of them, no, and literally right into the trash can would go. Turn Down Day was heard in that context.
Hmm.
And we thought, yeah, okay, that's an interesting song. The thing that there's a couple of things that I get a kick out of Turn Down Day. The first one is that it was co-written by Jerry Keller,
Uh-huh.
who had the 1950s hit, Here Comes Summer, School is Out, Oh Happy Day, that I always loved.
Yep.
I like that. So, and he wrote it with jazz pianist, blanking out on the name now. All right. I mean, anyway, anybody wants it's right there on the record if you want to. So recently, I had an opportunity. I was going to be actually on the air with Sirius XM DJ Flash Phelps, who has turned out to be a good friend of mine, actually.
I know him. I used
Do
to.
you? Oh, great guy, really great guy.
Yep.
And I thought, hey, if I'm going to be on the air with him, I should bring some interesting stuff to maybe play, you know. So what I did was I picked out funny versions or interesting versions of both Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day. I thought, hey, listen to this, you know. I mean, for instance, there's a you know, the German kind of dance. I can't believe I'm blanking out on these names, but you know, the funny that kind of music.
Yeah.
There's a version of that of Red Rubber Ball by a German group. And so one of the things I brought was Jerry Keller's original demo that was it was available online of Turn Down Day. And it reminded me how Turn Down Day, we really straightened it out in a way that made it really singable.
Okay.
Jerry Keller's version was a little odd, at least to me.
Mm-hmm.
There it was. But anyway, but to go back to your question on was it a real sitar? This is bandmate Tommy Dawes,
Mm-hmm.
who was always wanting to experiment. So we actually rented a real sitar. It was not a fake one. It was a real sitar. And I'm still remembering him sitting on the floor in Columbia Studios with this real sitar and just playing around. I mean, he didn't play it, you know,
Yeah.
but he just figured out, okay. And if you listen to Turn Down Day, he actually got it to the point that if an arranger had actually written out a sitar part, it's very logical,
Right.
and it repeats appropriately. So he did a great job on that.
Did he keep at it? Did he continue to play the sitar? Or it
No,
was
no,
his, I guess.
it was basically for that project. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
what made him think sitar? Only because,
George Harrison.
but I mean, it's one thing to think of the instrument, but how does it apply to that song?
Well, if you think about it, nobody ever used a sitar. And all of a sudden, the Beatles are now friendly with Ravi Shankar, world famous sitar player, Indian sitar player. And so they started using it, which made everybody else start using it. I can think of sitar, uh, sitars on songs that there's no way you would ever use it if it hadn't become popular. And sometimes it works well, and sometimes it really doesn't. In this case, it worked.
There were certain hits of the 60s, like Cried Like a Baby.
Mm-hmm. Perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah. Hooked on a Feeling. Was that
Yeah.
Was that a
I think there was a sitar in that.
Yeah.
And without the Beatles, there never would have been a sitar on that.
All right, very good. So before we talk about the tour, tell me more about, well, first of all, Nat Weiss. What was your relationship with? Did you spend a lot of time with him?
No, not a lot, but some. He set up an office in New York and where he lived, and he was basically the active manager. Brian was an overseer, would come in every once in a while. And whenever Brian was in, by the way, we did in fact meet with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Suite 28F at the Waldorf Towers. That's where Brian always stayed. And he would invite us up, and we would have a lovely chat. And that, yeah, so, but yeah, Nat, we would see him regularly because he was the active online, current guy, doing
Right.
the active stuff. Yeah.
Did
Lovely guy, nice guy.
did he give you guidance as to what the next step should be for the band or anything
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. I mean, we would talk about, what booking agents should we maybe be talking to, and who should be doing what. And, I remember him telling me once, "Oh, Don, I heard you yelled on that last recording. Good for you." Because I guess I was always considered soft, like.
Okay. And what about Brian? Did Brian ever make any suggestions to what the band should do?
No, he was more along the lines of, how are things going? Is there anything you need? Is there anything that we should be doing?
Hmm.
Yeah, more along, yeah, just checking up on how are things going.
I would think that probably both of them would try to keep up to date on your record sales and maybe make a suggestion here or there.
Oh, yeah, always. I mean, I'm still recollecting um, when Red Rubber Ball was on the way up.
Hmm.
I remember I would talk to Nat all the time from the Coast Guard. I started out in Cape May, New Jersey boot camp, Coast Guard Reserve,
Uh-huh.
and then I ended up on a buoy tender in Staten Island, which allowed me, by the way, I would be scrubbing pots and pans as a mess cook in the day, and then at night I would walk around the corner to the Staten Island ferry. We were right there into Manhattan and record all night. It was an interesting time period.
I'll bet.
Yeah. So, but I still remember being on the phone with Nat all the time, and he would update me on Red Rubber Ball record sales. And I'm still remembering. He said, "Oh yeah, Red Rubber Ball, it sold 25,000 copies in Atlanta this last week. Next week, oh yeah, 25,000 copies in Boston area." So as we kind of worked our way up the charts, yeah, he was he was communicating all the time. And this was back, while I was in the Coast Guard. It wasn't like I could even see him every day like that. But and I still remember one grand moment with Nat, and that was on the buoy tender. It was in the evening, and I guess it was an evening. I wasn't going into Manhattan, and I was waiting on the dock to make a phone call. Long before cell phones, obviously. With the phone booth on the dock. I was going to just call my parents to say hello, and the guy in front of me, we're just chatting. He says, "Hey, did you hear? There's a guy." One of the crew on the Arbutus, which was my ship, was a buoy tender. One of the crew of the Arbutus actually is in a group that has a hit record, and it's hit this week on WABC. Now, for those folks who are watching, listening, WABC was the music station at the time, probably the premier music station of the whole country. If you were a pick hit on WABC, that was a big deal.
Sure.
Now, I didn't know anything about this, and I didn't call my parents. I called Nat. I said, "Hey, Nat, I'm hearing that we're pick hit on WABC. Do you know anything about that?" And he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know anything about that. So he, made some quick phone calls. I mean, it really stirred up the pot. So that was like a very big deal to find that out.
Yeah, WABC was the station I grew up on as a little kid.
Yeah.
To 40
Well,
radio.
me too. Yeah, me too.
And love the DJs, love top 40, love the variety in top 40. I had my little transistor radio glued to my ear as I walked down the street.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really
in my commercial career, doing commercials for ad agencies, I got a real kick out of besides doing music, we would also record announcers.
Yep.
Like that. And very often, as a part of a piece of music we were doing, the ad agency would say, "Hey, while you're recording this music, do you mind, can we bring the announcer in and record it at the same time?" Well, of course, So I still remember guys like Bob Lewis, if you remember.
Yep.
Dan Ingram, people like that were, major guys. They would come in and they would be announcers in the studio, for commercials. It was great to meet them. Always fun.
Right. Oh, wow. Anyway, so let's talk about the tour and your memories about it. Did you get to know the Beatles very well? And
I can't say we got to know them well, but we certainly got to know them. So I'll just share, let me just share a few things. So the first thing, and I tell this on our show, depending on the length of the show, I get to tell Beatles stories. One of my Beatles stories, and the band, and if anybody from the band is watching this, I'm going to tell Paul on the plane now. And basically, so when we got the tour, of course, talk about excitement. I mean, oh my God, we're going to be one of the opening acts for the Beatles on the whole cross country. Amazing. So we're sitting on the plane. I'm sitting next to bandmate Tommy Dawes and Nat Weiss. It was the three, three on one side, three on the other side. It was a regular commercial airliner chartered for the tour. Everybody was on it. The Beatles were behind a wall that they built, in the back of the plane. So we're sitting there and we can't wait. Are they going to come out? Are we going to get to meet them now? This is before the first concert, on the way from New York to Chicago. Anyway, finally, well into the flight, Paul emerges. And by the way, when I do this at our show, and ladies and gentlemen, finally, the door opens and there's Paul. And that's how we do it. And you can see that he is a jovial guy, really a personality, jovial guy. He's shaking hands with everybody. Some people he's meeting for the first time. Some people, obviously, he knows, and it's like, shake hands, how are you? Da, 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 smiley, back and forth. Seems to be a very personable guy from whatever we can see. And finally, he gets up to us. And now Nat, who knows him, of course, introduces us. So Don Dannemann of the Cyrkle meet Paul McCartney. So I get to shake his hand. And it was basically, wow, Paul, it's great to meet you. We can't wait to, hear you guys play, and we can't wait to hang with you and whatever. It was like a couple of ditties back and forth. Tommy Dawes meet Paul McCartney. Same thing, couple of ditties back and forth. And then, well, okay, good to meet you guys. Looking forward to hearing you play, and we'll see you later. And back he goes, disappears behind the wall. And then Tommy and I spent the rest of the flight analyzing every word, every one of those words. It was like, oh, why couldn't we have been cooler, like that. But anyway, so we move on. So now I will share with you the first concert. Now, we still hadn't met him, but now there we are. We're about to go on stage, and we were really nervous, not about playing, but about being received, because we're thinking, oh, they're going to boo us, bring on the Beatles, get it, like that. We were very pleasantly surprised to get a really good reception. Ladies and gentlemen, the Cyrkle, yeah, it was really good. Now, we did have 2 hit records at the time, but still, okay. So we played, we did well. We're off now. So I want you to picture, this was a hockey stadium. So it's a long, narrow stadium, the way hockey stadiums are. And the stage is at one end. It's open. Mm-hmm. It's indoors, but the stage is open. And I was standing just behind the stage in the stands, just overlooking the stage, immediately overlooking the stage. And now waiting for the Beatles, to come out. And it's indoors. So here's my impression. Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles. All right. And when they came out, what I saw, now I can't swear that this is totally accurate, but it's accurate from what I saw. I saw they came out in line, 1, 2, 3, 4. They were wearing jackets. And in that light, they looked like kind of dark green velvety jackets. I don't know what they really were, but that's what it looked like to me in that light. Very elegant. Uh-huh. All right, so now they come on stage and they're playing, and the energy, of course, is contained because we're indoors. It's a roof, it doesn't go out. So it was deafening. You couldn't hardly hear music. It was totally deafening. And just give you a couple of little things that I saw that sort of maybe can give a sense of the energy. The first thing is I was standing next to a lady. I didn't know who she was. I'm guessing she was maybe part of the press. A little older. I'm guessing she was in her 30s, maybe late 30s. She was just crying. Tears rolling down her face. That was the emotion of it. It was just, she just lost it, like just that emotion. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, picture the Wizard of Oz in a little booth backstage with an electronic keyboard. And every time he pushes a button on that keyboard, it gives an electronic impulse, like a little shock, to one of the seats in the audience. And every time there's a shock, a girl jumps out of her seat. And what I saw was nonstop little girls jumping out of their seat, just jumping. That was just an amazing thing. So anyway, so that's my impression. Now, we still hadn't met him.
Right.
All right, so now let's go forward to the third. Go
So
on.
with that concert, you didn't hear them perform. You didn't really hear them.
Oh, you could hardly ever hear him.
Well, that depends.
But yes, I mean, you could, yes, if you really listened, yeah, you could hear, but not well. You never got to hear well,
You know,
really.
I've spoken to several fans and I've gotten mixed reactions.
Yeah.
Because my wife, and I bring this up every now and then, she went to see you guys at DC Stadium,
Yeah.
August. She couldn't hear anything other than the opening notes of If I Needed Someone.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But the other acts, they could hear. And
Well, yeah. And that makes sense because although we did well, we were well received. It wasn't the amazing pandemonium
right,
when we played that it was when the Beatles played.
right.
Yeah. So, okay. So now third concert now. We hadn't met him yet. Before the third concert, but getting ready to play at the third concert, we actually got summoned, like, oh, come, the boys will see you now. So we were shown back to their dressing room, and this is a stadium. It wasn't like a glamorous dressing room. It was a kind of a junky room with a couple of couches around, and so we get to walk in, and they're just slouched on the couches.
Hmm.
I'm still remembering like John, Ringo, Paul, George. They're just John had his little granny glasses on, and we got to shake every hand, me. And I ended up in front of George. And as I'm in front of George now, I'm thinking to myself, I guess I'm here. I guess I can chat with him. So, we actually had a lovely conversation. And the conversation was along the lines of basically two guys who were in a part similar circumstance and a part totally not similar circumstance. But George there was a real warmth about George. And he looked at me and he was genuinely interested. Well, how did you guys make this happen? How did you get here? Where did, he wanted to know some details about how the whole thing, this whole Cyrkle thing came. And he said, yeah, and it seems like you guys are doing really well and it's great. And he shared with me, he says, with this amazing success that we have had, I am still blown away by, it's only a couple of years ago, we were this little band in Liverpool, so he really was appreciative of that. And that's, and when I think of George, it's like my sort of mnemonic for George is warm George, because there was a real warmth to him. Now let's see. In terms of, I can remember playing cards at the hotel one night. Just playing cards with Paul and Ringo. And it's kind of funny when you think of playing cards with Paul and Ringo. If Paul and Ringo were not Beatles, in a similar way to what I said about George, there was a part of that card playing thing. It was just a couple of guys playing cards.
Sure.
They didn't make a deal out of, but they were very careful to make sure we were not playing for big money, because we didn't have big money, and I think we played for quarters or something like that. And it was just very casual, fun, kind of pleasant. Just we didn't talk about music. We just played cards. What do you got? What do you got? What do you got? That was kind of a nice thing. Now,
was it that way throughout the whole tour? You didn't talk about music, or just up to that?
No. The one thing that really actually was really annoying to me was at the end of the conversation with George, back in that first conversation that I shared with you, our road manager, young kid who was our road, his job was to carry stuff around.
Mm.
Out of the blue, he kind of leans over and he asks George, "Hey, what guitar did you use in And I Love Her, the song And I Love Her?" Now, actually, we probably knew more about what guitars they used than they did because we studied, But I remember all of a sudden, this wonderful conversation that we were having, it changed from two guys having a nice chat to, oh, here's a fan asking you a question.
Uh-huh.
And I remember he did a little double take, and he actually, for a second, he started thinking, let's see. So what guitar was it then? And right then, they broke us up because, hey guys, you got to go play. We need you to get out of here now. So that we had to leave, and that was that. But no, we did not talk about music.
I was wondering, I would have hoped in your case that maybe they might have commented about your songs. Did they ever say, well, I like Red Rubber Ball or
Yeah, actually, yes, they did. Yeah, there were some comments. I remember John at an interview. He was asked about like backwards recording. Hey, you guys doing backwards recording? And his comment was, oh no, that's the Cyrkle that does that. That was his, and we actually didn't really do backwards. But he just did that. Yeah, every once in a while. And also John's other comment that he would occasionally, he would come over and he'd look and he kind of squint a little bit. So you guys ever learned to spell yet? That was his, having given us our.
So I realize I should know this. By the time that tour took place, was Turn Down Day already out?
Yes.
So you never heard anything from any of the Beatles, especially George Harrison, about the sitar use in the song or anything?
No, not that I'm recollecting. Once in a while people ask questions and I have to, and sometimes I don't remember at the moment. And then it comes back to me, oh yeah, I remember it was that moment. And he said, hey, how did you like doing the sitar there? At this moment, I don't remember that, but that, and if I ever get the memory, like, if something comes back to me, I'll have to let you know. But at the moment, no, I don't remember anything about him asking about the sitar.
It just seems to me that if George heard it, he probably would have gone out of his way to talk to you about it.
Yeah, it could be the case. But I'm not gonna give you a memory I don't have.
Okay.
But sometimes they come back. That has happened to me where I think back and I go, somebody asked this question and I didn't remember it, but as I think, oh yeah, we were right in that place in the moment and we were just on that line getting a thing or whatever. Yeah. So it does happen.
So most of the time when you did talk to the Beatles, it would either be in a hotel room or on the plane.
Yeah.
Were you ever in the dugout in these stadiums together or?
No, they were always back. And when they would come out and then when they were finished, they would be whisked off and out there. So there was not dugout hanging out. I do remember just one more thing with George, and that was at Candlestick Park. He was walking around with a camera and he was taking pictures, and we asked, why are you taking pictures? You don't think enough people are taking pictures of this that and he says, well, I'd like to have some personal memories of, because we don't, basically this was the time where now we didn't know this at the time, but this was the time where the Beatles were discussing not wanting to play in person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was on his mind. and he just, you know, thinking that this might never happen again, these big stadium things like that, he wanted to have some memories. And so, and he said that, you know, he said, you know, I'm just wondering, in case we don't do this anymore, like, we just want to have some personal memories. So, and that was an interesting thing to hear from him.
Were there observations that you made of the four of them as the tour progressed that they were really getting, you know, weary of it? That they were getting less and less interested?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like ho hum, no hum, you know. Yeah, we definitely got that. There was never a boy, I'm tired of doing this, I don't want to do it anymore. I never heard anything like that. But you could get a sense of like, you know, got a little bit of a sense of, you know, we want to go beyond this crazy crowd stuff where people can't even hear.
Oh, and they've said that in interviews.
Yeah, yeah. So you got a sense of that. Yeah.
Yeah, they felt that they weren't improving musically. They're always playing the same songs, their half-hour shows,
Yeah.
and yeah, and they couldn't hear themselves. Although, you know, I have talked to fans over the years, and they'll tell me there was a difference between 1965 and 66, that you couldn't hear them at all in 65, and at certain venues you could hear them in 66. So it depends,
Oh,
I
a
guess, on
little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Now, of course, I wasn't there in 65,
right.
but you know, but for the most part, I mean, I'm still recollecting sort of being on the ground and looking up at the stage while they were playing. And all had to happen was Paul would look that way, and that whole side of the stadium would erupt into pandemonium, you know, and then he'd look the other way, and then whoa, you know, like that. So, you know, yeah, that maybe it wasn't quite as intense as 65, but it was pretty intense.
Did you get to know the other acts? Did you spend a lot of time bonding with the Ronettes or the Remains, Bobby Hebb?
Well, Bobby Hebb, I remember. Yeah, we spent some time with Bobby Hebb. Bobby Hebb was actually a pretty good guitar player, although I think he didn't play when he performed. But I remember we got a tour of the Fender factory in when we were in LA, and we became spokespeople for for Fender,
Mhm.
actually. And I can show you, except I don't think I can, it'll do it because, as I said, I have on here the setting that blurs out the background, the zoom setting.
Right.
And there's a simple little thing, and I could show you two of my guitars that I got from Fender. They're right up on the wall behind me there. And I could pick them up and show you it, but I can't find the thing that unblurs it.
Yes.
But hold on, I'll try. Let me see if I'll just pick up here. This is,
Yeah, it's right next to you.
well, it's right here now.
It's still okay. It's a bit
You
blurry.
see how it's coming in and out? Yeah, see it's coming in and out there. Oh, there it is. Let's see. There we go. That was from 1966, gotten from Fender. It's a Jaguar guitar.
Mhm.
It's on my wall. Now hold on.
Yep.
I will. And here.
All right.
There, where we see. There we go. Fender Jazz Bass.
Okay.
In and out, coming in and out of focus from 1966. Also gotten from Fender. One of the things we got, and they would advertise the Cyrkle uses Fender.
Hmm. Well, that would have been the year to contact you guys.
Yeah.
Everything happened for you in 1966.
Yeah, 1966 was quite a year.
But did you get to know you know, the other acts very well?
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, the Remains, uh, one of the fellas from the Remains recommended Mike Loskamp, who was the keyboard player who replaced Earl Pickens, who was our original Cyrkle keyboard player from college. And Earl was in med school, and he was not going to drop out of med school. And he went through the Beatles tour, and he continued a little bit into the fall. But we were looking to replace him because he couldn't do it anymore. He was in med school, and it was one of the Remains who recommended Mike Loskamp, who replaced Earl and was with us until we finally did break up in '68, and is part of the revival, of our Cyrkle revival.
Yeah,
great guy, very good singer, good keyboard player, good guy. Yes.
So one of the members of the Remains gave you a musician that remains.
That very clever. Very good.
So what were the reasons for the breakup in '68?
Okay. As best as I can, well, it's real simple. We weren't selling records the way we should have. And the way I looked at it was the record sales, if you look at a graph, let's see, I'll see on camera, the sales just sort of trickled down. And I have a theory that certain songs have magic. Other songs can be fabulously well recorded, well done, well everything, but they don't quite have that magic that puts them up to be hit records. And when I was earlier in our talk, when I was talking about Red Rubber Ball had that magic that, it starts out, you could hear as you go through our portfolio, we actually got better and more sophisticated in the studio as time went on. But something about the magic of Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day in part as well didn't quite continue. It just didn't quite, even though the recordings were really good. I mean, I'm actually very proud of what we did, but it just didn't quite connect. It's kind of like, you've heard of Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes of Fame. It's kind of like, while we were in the 15 minutes, everything worked. It was perfect. And when the 15 minutes were over, it kind of didn't. So it didn't quite come together the way it should. And it was a gradual, like, well, I think it's time to break up. Let's go our separate ways.
It's kind of interesting because you were talking about how the Cyrkle's music became more complicated and more sophisticated, and you're dealing with a time once you're getting into the late '60s and early '70s when progressive rock was really taking off. So, did you ever give any thought to asking Apple if they'd be interested in signing? I know that Brian died in '67,
right?
But did you ever think of asking Nat Weiss or approaching anybody? Because you had the connection, and you still had 2 hit records under your belt. You still had history.
Well, no, the way it ended up was Tommy Dawes started his commercial music production company. He was getting it started, and Marty and Loskamp were just kind of hanging out, just not doing much of anything, and I had thought, and Nat and I actually talked about it, to continue the Cyrkle, and let's kind of see what happens. And I know the last song, I don't remember the exact chronology of what was right before it, but at least the last song and maybe the last couple were all me. Actually, it was without the other guys. Now, the very last song was called Reading Her Paper. And it was released, and it was a beautiful, wonderful song, nicely done, produced with Charlie Colello, who I don't know if you know who he is, but a lot of big stuff Charlie did, and including connections with the Four Seasons. But basically that was kind of it, and it just slowly went down. I'm still remembering the very last time that we played was, I think it was February of '68 at a teenage nightclub in Pennsylvania, somewhere in Pennsylvania. And we were essentially broken up at this point, but it was booked.
Right.
So we played it, so I think we had some rented cars and we went out, we lugged our own stuff in and we played. And I'm remembering playing. And because we hadn't played in a while, when you play a lot, you could almost close your eyes and play. I remember thinking, whoops, it's not coming quite as naturally as it does because we haven't done it in a while. The memory is not quite as fresh. But we played and we did our thing and we went through and we all kind of, okay, see you around. I was inspired by Tommy starting his commercial company to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we both had really nice careers, actually. I mean, I'm very thankful for what I was able to achieve. I had a nice, we did well.
Okay. I heard that Tommy, he wrote the very famous Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah.
Plop, flop, fizz, fizz.
Yeah, he did that.
And
In part of our show, it depends on the length of the show. If it's a long enough show, we actually do a section of commercials.
Oh.
And and the setup is, hey Don, what'd you do for the last 50 years? The group broke up in '68 and you only recently got together. Did you do anything? And we do commercials. So what a little part of that show is, so we have like a sort of medley of stuff that that was related to myself and Tommy. We do that, and then we end it, and then I talk about, in advertising, one of the things that happens is ad agencies will call several companies and say, hey, we want a piece of music for the following product, write something, and the winner gets the job. Excuse me. The winner gets the job, which goes on the air. And we actually beat Tommy 3 years in a row it was Coppertone. It happened to be Coppertone commercials. There were competitions 3 years in a row, and we won 3 years in a row. And then we play one of the ones that won. And it basically is like, flash 'em a fast tan, flash 'em a dark tan, flash 'em a Coppertone tan, flash 'em a Coppertone tan. That's one of them that was on the air, and it was, right. You may remember it. And then I look up at the sky, say, but Tommy is up there laughing at us guys because he went and wrote the one commercial that there's not anybody in here unless you were just born doesn't know. And then the band together, we all say plop, plop, fizz, fizz. And it's a nice part of the show.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of, if you've ever seen Barry Manilow in concert, he does a whole string of the songs that he wrote jingles for.
Yeah, I know.
People may not know that it was him that wrote them.
Yeah.
In some cases, he sang them too in the commercials. So yeah, and you wrote one for 7-Up, right?
No, actually, that was Tommy. Now that was the one that started. Well, actually, the thing that started the commercial thought process was we didn't write it, but a lot of bands did versions of it back at that time.
Okay.
And it was. Any place can be a soda fountain now with great shakes, new great shakes. So, well, we did a Great Shakes commercial. We were one of a whole bunch of bands that did a Great Shakes commercial. And if any of your listeners have a copy of our version, I would love to get it because I can't find it. It would be fun to hear. Anyway, that got us started with the thought process of doing commercials. But Tommy did that 7-Up one. He wrote it, and then the band, recorded it.
Okay.
So if you hear it, that is actually me going 7-Up, 7-Up, 7-Up the Uncola, 7-Up the Uncola. That's me. And then Tommy comes in and does, but we had some pretty good successes with commercials that, some big commercials that we did well on.
Yeah. Paid the bills.
It did pay the bill. Yeah.
So fast forward now to reforming
Okay.
and how that started.
Well, I was retired now, living in, where were we? We're in Pennsylvania. Well, no, I'm sorry. Back where we're living in Delaware, back in where we had moved from Pennsylvania to Delaware, left the city, and basically was retired. I got a call from bandmate Mike Loskamp.
Mhm.
Now, Mike, when the band broke up, Mike still played and had some local bands, and actually had some record contracts locally in Ohio. And although he had a regular full-time job, he never stopped playing.
Mhm.
So he was in a band called the Gas Pump Jockeys in Columbus, Ohio. And one of his bandmates, Pat McLaughlin, decided, hey, Mike, you were a Cyrkle. Why can't we be the Cyrkle? You hear all these bands, oldie bands go out, and many times there's not even any originals, but at least often there's at least one or two, some original members. And a booking agent of his says, well, you know what? Why don't you get one of the other original guys, and then we can see about booking you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Mike called me and put me with Pat, because Pat was sort of the organizer of the whole thing. He was actually a salesman at AT&T, and a sales manager, actually. So he knew business, and he knew how to sell and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was his dream. I think we can get the Cyrkle back together. So after deciding with my wife, all right, I'll take a shot. Sure, let's see if anything happens. They flew me out to Columbus from Delaware. He and his wife, Sandy, picked me up at the airport, put me up in a hotel, treated me really nicely. I got to meet the Gas Pump Jockeys, the band.
Yeah.
Now, and the band turned out to be a really bunch of nice guys and wives, a family folks, really nice people. Felt very comfortable. When we went down to Don White, guitar player Don White's basement, where they rehearsed, and we started playing. The playing worked out really well, and as a matter of fact, one of the things we played was Feeling Groovy, because I told them about my Feeling Groovy story, and so I started playing it. They just immediately picked up and started playing it, and I still remember drummer Scott Langley. He put his head down on his drums. He was because he said, I can't believe how that sounds like the Cyrkle. Just what we did. And if we don't do anything else, I'm a happy guy. I still remember Scott saying that. And so anyway, so we decided, let's do it. So then Pat found out, if we really want to get booked, we need to have a good demo tape, a promo video. So he booked a small theater, film crew, recording, and we played, shot the video, got a recording matched with the video. I actually was able to get the tracks and remix it myself, which I feel good. We got and that actually, I can actually correct you. I think you said the first CD in 50 whatever years. It's the first studio CD. That's correct. Okay. But there is actually a live CD of that concert, actually, and it's pretty good. And we do sell that as well. So anyway, once we got that, we then were able to get booked. And I'm still remembering the first show we finally got, because even though this is an old group, an old hit group, but it's a new revival group, so it was not easy to get booked. And our first booking was with promoter Joe Mirioni in Lakewood, New Jersey. And we did really well, so that kind of started the ball rolling. I still remember a standing ovation when we ended with Red Rubber Ball, which of course we do. We were really well received, and with a bunch of other great 60s acts. I think the headliner of the show was Gary Puckett and the Union Gap on that particular show. So that actually got the ball rolling. And I think one of the personal, and I think the band would probably agree with this, one of the really cool things was when we did the Flower Power cruise a couple of years ago. That was awesome to do that, because we were well received. And when we weren't playing, just walking around the ship, and every passenger on this ship was a music passenger, because the whole ship was music passengers. It wasn't like divided up. And it was really cool that we would be sitting having breakfast, and people would come down and sit with us and ask us questions, and it was fine. It was really good to relate to fans and stuff. Really nice. Yeah, it's good.
Flower Power Cruise is beyond awesome.
Yeah.
There's so many acts packed on the bill here. It's like so many acts from the 60s. The ones still going, they hold on to them and they put them on this cruise. And that's why I immediately associate where you guys would fit really well, or a Happy Together tour or something like that.
Well, we actually got offered that, but here's the Happy Together tour is basically, I'm going to refer to it as, at least as it's been told to me, it's a booking from hell. Because, not that anybody's bad on it, but you go nonstop through the whole summer, and you're basically living out of a bus the whole summer, and it just didn't seem worth it to do. It's a great tour, and I've never seen it myself, but I know people who have seen it, and we know artists who have been on it.
Right.
And so I don't want to say anything bad about it from that viewpoint. If you're a 60s fan and they come to you, go see them. I'm sure you'll love it. But it just wasn't worth it to be all summer away from home on a bus.
All right. Why don't we talk about this new album?
Let's do that.
Okay, Center of the World. You actually have a couple songs on there that Tom Dawes is on.
Yes.
How did you manage to do that?
Okay, that was a huge thrill for me. And what happened was, photographer Daniel Costin, who has become a really good friend of the band through circumstances. We don't need to, go how we met him, but good guy, good friend of the band, and is musically connected in lots of ways. He sent me a song, and the song, it was called He Can Fly, and he didn't say anything about it. He says, Don, I have a song. I want you to just listen to it and tell me what you think. Okay, I listened to it. And he, like I say, he didn't say anything about it. And I thought, nice song. It sounds like there's definitely Beatle influence, and there's Beach Boy influence, and, 60s feel to it. Okay, why'd you send it to me now? He says, okay, now that you heard it, I just want to tell you that the background, all of the background voices on this song are bandmate Tommy Dawes. Now, Tommy Dawes died in 2007. And actually, he and I were actually talking about getting back together and doing a band again. And he was actually on his way. He and his wife were coming to visit us in Pennsylvania. And he calls me up. He says, we can't come. My doctor wants me to have carotid artery surgery, and he didn't want me to wait. I just, not a big deal, but, we'll come out maybe next week. Okay, fine. He dies on the operating table. that night.
Oh man.
I was on the phone back and forth with Earl Pickens, original keyboard Earl Pickens, who is in fact a surgeon, very successful surgeon in Gainesville, Florida. And, he was trying to figure out, well, what happened? And in the end, it didn't make any difference. Some complications, and he died on the operating table. Anyway, after this, that was really sad. But after that, his death, over time, I thought about, wouldn't it be cool to see if I can get some vocals of Tommy and kind of do something like the Beatles did with John Lennon, Free as a Bird.
Yep.
That, they took an old demo of John Lennon and made a whole new, So wouldn't that be cool if I could do that? Tommy was my co-vocalist on Red Rubber Ball. I started, he comes in with the harmony. We had this wonderful blend. So anyway, when I heard this song and I find out the vocals, the background vocals are all Tommy, I think, aha. Hey, Daniel, and the song was, by the way, written and recorded by a fellow named Andrew Sandoval, who has to do with the Monkees. He has management, something with the Monkees, not clear exactly.
Right.
I said, hey, Andrew, Daniel, can you get in touch with Andrew and see, would he allow me to get those vocals, to get Tommy's vocals? Here's what I'm thinking to do. Now, I had no idea how it would turn out. I just knew I had the concept to do it. So anyway, so he did. And Andrew was wonderful. He said, take it. He sent me the whole session, like digital recording, the whole session. So I had access to Tommy's background vocals. Now, the only word that he actually sang as part of the background vocal was fly. And so I'm basically playing around with them. I'm trying to put them in a way that I think, because I don't know where I'm going with this. I just know I have the idea. I want to make a song that it honors our history. That was where I'm going from. So I'm placing them, I'm moving them around, I'm da da da. I was able to, you can do it digitally now. You can change notes and they still sound okay. I was able to change a note here and there, which means I could change chords as it went.
Okay.
And finally, I came up with We Thought We Could Fly, which is the last song on the album. And that song honors Tommy and I and that history. And everything on the song, of course, you can't go into detail, but the gist of the song is exactly what happened.
Right.
That's how it was, from that freshman mixer where we first started playing together.
The guitar riff at the very beginning of that song, it sounds a lot like when the band was singing Shakin' All Over. Were you aware of that?
No.
When the band was singing Shakin' All Over?
No, not aware.
Guess who did it? Also, it's kind of similar. I didn't know if you were aware of it.
No. But which guitar riff are you?
At the beginning of We Thought We Could Fly.
Well, We Thought We Could Fly. The guitar, I wouldn't call it a riff. It's more like a sound. It's like, is that what you're talking about?
No, at the very beginning, what you hear at the beginning of the song. I'd have to play it. You don't want me to sing it, but it just reminded me of that song.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure I remember what specific riff, but it's hard to come up with a riff that's not something like something else. That is
sometimes it's intentional.
Yeah.
Or it's an homage.
No, there was nothing intentional about copying anybody. It was just like I just tried to think, what can I do to honor the thing, and how can I use Tommy's vocals, and how could I have a song that's coherent
right
on it? And that's how it came up, and that was a thrill for me to do that. So, and that's how we end the album. Now, the other song, Andrew Sandoval requested in our doing this back and forth, he said, "Hey, by the way, would you be okay to redo my lead on my song?" And he did the lead vocal on it, and it was actually fine. But when he said, and I was a little nervous, I said, "Of course I'll do it," but I was a little nervous because like I say, I think he did a really good job. But I'll do it, absolutely. So, and I'm actually pleased with how it turned out. I think I did right by him by doing that. And then when I did that, it was Daniel that said, "Hey, that should be on the album too." So basically, there are now 2 songs on this album where I sing with original Cyrkle bandmate Tommy Dawes, and that's just a thrill to do.
Yeah, so that's Dance With Me Tonight.
No, that's He Can Fly.
This year, Tom's vocals are on tracks 5 and 13. So track 5 is Dance With Me Tonight.
Oh, well, unless the order has changed. No, the song is He Can Fly is the other one.
Okay.
Not Dance With Me Tonight.
All right. I was wondering, I wanted to talk to you about Dance With Me Tonight because
yeah,
certainly sounds like Chubby Checker singing it.
It's really interesting that you say that, because that's Pat McLaughlin singing that. And I never talked about this with Pat, but somewhere, I think in commenting on Pat's vocal with someone else in another conversation, I think we sort of talked about, yeah, it's kind of like a Chubby Checker sort of sound. I mean, we actually have said that. So you're not alone doing that. And Pat, if you're listening to it, it's a compliment. But it's that really, come on, baby, let's do the twist. And Pat does that. Yeah, he's right out there. Yeah, it's very cool.
It isn't just stylistically a song that's Chubby Checker-ish, but vocally he does sound very much like him.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, well, I'll have to let him know that we talked about it. Now, I can actually kind of quickly go through every song on here and, without forever, and give you a quick, here's where this came from and here's the story of it. Okay, so it starts out Going Steady With You. Now, that is a song that I actually wrote when I was 16 years old. And my mom and her piano teacher brought me into a studio in New York. We came in from Eastchester, and I did a bunch of just guitar voice demos.
Yeah. One
of which was this Going Steady With You. And then when we were going to do this album, and I thought, it would be sort of, how would I do this song if, as a final recording, never having thought about it at the time. I mean, 16, I wrote a song, played it. And I thought, I think this should be done kind of like maybe what Bobby Rydell, Bobby Darin might do. How would they do that song? And hence, and if you listen to it, you'll see there's brass on it and that kind of stuff. And then, and I think it was Daniel Costin who thought, hey, might it be, or maybe Pat, wouldn't it be cool to start it out with your original 16-year-old demo to start it out? And it actually, what you hear, it starts out with, it's from the actual vinyl that was a pressing that I got from the studio. I don't have the tape, but I have the vinyl. And you hear the record scratch, and I left the scratching on purpose. You hear the record scratch, and it's the first verse. I got a baby, and she's mine, oh mine. Going Steady With You. Obviously, it's a very 50s, early 60s vocal, with that. And then it goes into that final recording. So I get a kick out of that. Okay, next. Well, pretty obvious. We did our version of the 59th Street Bridge song.
Great harmony.
Correcting history. 59th Street Bridge song. Okay, next is We Can Find It. And that's one of a couple of songs that Mike Loskamp wrote and does lead on. And his basic concept on both his songs, it was kind of free love of that time. They were songs written on that time, and he kind of captures that. And he was very influenced and is a fan of Steely Dan.
Mm.
And if you listen to both of them on both of his songs, there's that influence. Does a wonderful job. Really, really good. Okay,
Is that a Hammond organ at the end?
well, it would have been from a computer generated,
Okay.
not a, yeah.
I love how it was used at the end there.
But it was, yeah. Okay, then we have The Visit. Now The Visit this is the one song back then that Mike actually had sang lead on. And it was the B-side of, I don't remember which record, it was the B-side. And every once in a while in our revival, The Visit has gotten noticed.
Hmm.
And it was like comments about, hey, that was a great song. Do you think, would you do it like that? All right, so Mike does that. Now, Dance With Me Tonight, that's the one with Pat sounding like Chubby Checker, if you want to call it that. And that's a song that we heard. And whenever we play it, it's a really great dance song. You get the feeling of people are up and, dance with me tonight. It really kind of, it brings everybody up.
I feel like I'm watching American Bandstand while I'm hearing that.
Yeah, it is kind of that. Okay, then we got He Can Fly. Now that's the original Andrew Sandoval song we just talked about. Okay, Center of the World is basically the story of my online romance with my now wife, second marriage for both of us, how we met online on the computer, and how I happened to meet I'm in New York and I happened to meet a gal in San Diego. And so the center of the world is San Diego because I fell in love with this gal from San Diego, but I'm stuck on the other coast.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that came from. Sing for Tomorrow, that's the other one that Mike wrote. Similar. He's dreaming of a better tomorrow. It's kind of, it was an in vogue sentiment of that era. That's, late 60s, 70s era. And once again, it does a wonderful job on that. Okay, I Believe She Believes. That was written by Pat. And it was originally a country song. And it was actually recorded by his old country band. And the band, our current Cyrkle, they were wary of recording it because we're not a country band. We shouldn't be that. And but Pat loved the song. He thought I really would love to record this song. And so I took it upon myself to say, I can make a rock arrangement out of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I did. I made a rock arrangement out of it. And I get a kick out of it, how it sounds. Okay, We Were There that's a tribute to the fact that we, the Cyrkle, were there with the whole Beatles phenomenon, and we got to meet them and interact with them. We were there.
Right.
Holy cow! That's basically what that's about.
If you look,
all the lyrics are reminiscent of the story of what happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're looking for a song that makes references to the Beatles and to Brian and to John giving you the name and all that, it tells the whole story that way.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, exactly it. Okay, Turn Down Day is a re-recording where we try to really, other than better technological equipment nowadays, really trying to nail the magic of the original recording, but making it a current, up-to-date recording. And I feel pretty good how we did it. Red Rubber Ball, same thing. Let's re-record Red Rubber Ball, but let's keep it as good as we can with the sound and the magic of the original. And I was very surprised, although Red Rubber Ball was not a complicated recording, but in order to get the sound of the original, when we first did the track, and then we listened to like a rough mix of the first thing, I remember listening to it and I go, oh no, we got a lot of fix up to do here. And I personally took it upon myself to say, we're going to fix this. And I was back and forth from Delaware to Columbus, Ohio online. I mean, I wasn't going back and forth, but this was during COVID.
Yeah.
Files back and forth, and wait a minute, that's not right. How do we fix this? No, let's do this. That's not right. And in the end, we got a really good recording of Red Rubber Ball, very close to the original, updated technology. And finally, we thought we could fly, which the singing with Tommy that we talked about.
Yeah, this is such a great effort overall. I'm so impressed with everything that I've heard. I love, by the way, you're talking about The Visit. The singing on there is phenomenal. Those really high notes.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike has a very good high falsetto, and he takes great pride in maintaining it. And yeah, so he really he does one song in the show that it's called Vehicle, and it's a really it's a kick. It's a kick. Pardon?
It's a March hit.
Say again.
The Ides of March hit.
I don't know who did it originally. When Mike did it, I wasn't familiar with the song when I first heard him doing it with the band. But he ends up, after a wonderful performance, and he ends up with a wonderful high note. And I get a kick out of being on stage, and Mike is off, he's on his keyboard there, and he does this high note, and I'm able to sort of watch this when he does the high note, and everybody really goes, yeah, that he gets great recognition for that.
Okay, I'm wondering if it was that hit, because it's a very well-known song.
Yeah, it probably is, but like I say, I was not familiar with the song, and to me, Mike's version that's the song, because I don't know the original.
You want me to say some of the words? Because don't ask me to sing.
Sure.
Because I love you, need you, got to have you, child. Great God in heaven, I love you.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay, good.
Yeah, and his end is, great God in heaven, I love you. He goes way up there. I forget exactly the note, but it's really good, and it's a wonderful dramatic moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there are some really great moments throughout this entire CD. And I love what you said about redoing Turn Down Day and Red River Ball, because you don't want to lose the magic that was in the originals to begin with.
Right.
And made them special.
Yeah.
And really good job on those two songs and everything on here. There's always a song in my head that I'm hearing after I listen to this. It's always different every single day. But is the single Dance With Me Tonight? I thought I heard that was chosen as the single.
No, nothing has actually been chosen as a single yet. It's been talked about, so we don't know how it's going to go. And frankly, I don't know that singles are even relevant anymore. I mean, I think you can go online and buy the album. Now, anybody who goes online and buys the album, well, they're going to get the whole album. So whatever song they like the most, I guess you could say that's the single. Now, will it be that? I don't know. Now, once it gets to streaming, any song could be streamed more than others, individually. So not sure how that's going to play out. We don't know how that's going to play out. So far, now this is what I think. I'm not 100% sure about this, but so far, you can buy the album, and I think the easiest way to do it is if you go on the Cyrkle website, there's a link, and it will get you to Etsy.
Hmm.
to the right page, and that's how you can buy the album. Now, you also, I believe Daniel has sent you a link direct to Etsy, but it'll get you to the same place. And also from the Cyrkle.com, the website where the link is, you also can email, and that email, if you want to buy the album that way, Sandy, Pat's wife, Sandy McLaughlin, will see the email and get in touch with whoever did it, and that's how you would you can buy. Excuse me, that's how you buy the album.
Okay. Well, all these links are going to be in my description box for this video. So
Oh, terrific!
it'll also be your Facebook page. And
Yeah,
any plans at all for a tour? I know you have a date coming in Florida.
we have a couple of dates in Florida. Not sure about the finality of them yet. I know that the one final one is in St. Pete in March. That I know that. And I believe there's another one in Michigan in April. And maybe another one the week after in Florida as well. I think that might be Fort Myers. So that's what I know at the moment. And whenever we go on these things, it's always so cool because we get to see people, other 60s artists who have now become our friends.
Yeah.
So great to go and hang out, and after the shows we always meet at the hotel and have a couple of drinks and yuck it up. It's very cool.
There's a show you're going to be doing. The one in St. Pete is called Stars of the 60s. And I have the link in the description box if people want to find out more about that too.
Oh yeah, do that. Those shows are really good. They're really good. And actually, do you know even who the other artists are? Because I don't.
Not for that show, no.
No.
Off the top of my head, no, but I'm sure it's a good show. But if you follow a lot of these tours, especially the Flower Power one and Happy Together, a lot of the acts that are always out on the road. The Turtles, Gary Puckett, the Cowsills are very active again.
Yeah.
They sound phenomenal.
Yeah, great. And they're nice folks, the Cowsills. Yeah.
I've seen them many times in concert. Talk about harmonies.
Yeah, very good.
Down there. But yeah, Dan, this has been absolutely phenomenal doing this with you. And thanks so much for doing this. Once again, the CD is called Center of the World. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, hold it in front of you. No, hold it up in front of you and move it over. Yeah, now put it right in front of your face. And go more towards the camera. There you go. Okay, now they saw it. Okay. You can put it down now.
All right. I want to just make sure, because it's very easy for me to forget. Thank you to Dan Costin for helping to set this up. And Don Dannemann, anytime you want to be a guest here on this channel, your family here.
Well, thank you. And vice versa. I have taken it upon myself. I have the email connection, I think, of every interview that I've done. And if I ever have anything that I want to share, I'll do it.
Okay.
I will absolutely do it. So I won't be bashful to come back if I have something I want to share. And it was lovely to talk with you, Ken. Had a good time.
We'll let folks know about more shows from the Cyrkle, and if you have any plans of doing any more recording. So keep us posted on that.
Will do.
Okay, Don, thanks so much. Thanks to everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.